Instead of just getting the random, obscure information, what I'd like you to think about today, and you might want to take some notes, is to maybe think about how you are as a person. How are you functioning mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually? Now, obviously, there's things going on which are beyond our control, and the world is upside down with things. And so what happens is we're left a lot to our own devices. But what also perfect opportunity if you're in lockdown, or if you cannot get to people, you're just with a few people, to use your own inspiration the way you want to gain information. Now, when I tell you about these different things, firstly, you must remember you must always sit with the spirit world. It takes time to blend and attune. So, you know, if you are, as a person, drawn to artwork or color or shape or perhaps texture, you need to look at these variables within your mediumship. You need to be able to have a mind that is expansive and broad enough to absorb different aspects of mind in the spirit. Instead of waiting for great evidence, wouldn't it be wonderful if the spirit world could stimulate your mind in a way they can inspire you with something you understand? Now, a lot of things, for example, you might not understand. Say if I was to say to you, okay, you have 3 elements, snow, sand, and wind. Please go and make a contact for someone psychically, and then bring forward a contact from the spirit world spiritually with those elements. You'd go, what's she talking about? But the spirit world are more than just their evidence. So we know we have the vital evidence to verify who our communicators are, but there's more to them in their life. So I would say to you, what inspires you in your life? Physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. Where do you get your oomph from? You know, you might be an avid reader of books. We all, usually most spiritualists or most mediums and people in this field, love to absorb knowledge through reading. Unfortunately, we have to always remember, every book is just someone else's individual perception and opinion. Even when it comes from the great guides in the spirit world, people like Silver Birch and Monsieur Basang, all of those people, all those great guides that come through, they're only giving you a perspective of their perception at that given time, right? And so we are in an ever-changing world. So if we are not innovative and creative within our work and in our well-being ourselves, we will get left behind and we will become staid mediums, okay? So there's a lot of things that are said in the old books that are very true, and there's a lot that can definitely relate to today's world, but there's a lot of words and a lot of things repeated, and people know it and read it, but they don't do anything about it. So I would say to you, have you ever thought of getting a piece of paper and just sitting outside in a nice place in your choice? It could be nature, it could be your garden, it could be going for a walk with your dog, it could be riding a horse, somewhere outside with a pen and paper in your pocket, and just talking to the spirit world and allowing different aspects to touch your mind. How do you feel about the wind in your face? How do you feel about rain? If I was to give you an example, a raindrop is not just water. It's an energetic form of color. So there's every color of the rainbow in rain, in water. When we see light reflected through water on different parts of shadows, reflections, the road, we see the beautiful colors of the universe. But because our physical eyes just see what's in front of us, and because our physical minds just take on board what we know, we sometimes don't look out of the box. So I want to say to you, what inspires you? You know, what inspires you? Is there something in your life that you're good at? You might be a fabulous, wonderful cook. You might be like Christine. I'm a little bit of a Babs Bleach, I call myself. I'm a good cleaner. Wendy will tell you that. I have this fetish with cleaning, okay? So you can see every cleaning product in my cupboard. So it's something I relate to. So if I was to give you an example of getting someone from the spirit world and they were a cleaner, I guarantee I could give you a name of every product that they use. So they can access things in my mind. So I want you to think what affects you in your daily life, physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually? Where is your inspiration? Now, let's say, for example, if we looked at our Susie, if you find Susie McDougall on the screen, I know Susie, so she won't mind me using her as an example. But if you look at that plethora of collections behind Susie, there are so many different shapes, textures, colors, and objects behind Susie that you could make a contact with, right? You could be drawn to anything. Now, for example, you might be sitting looking at Susie, and I'll give you a very basic experience of what perhaps you look at the wooden picture frame that we can see with a black and white photograph behind Susie, and it's a square picture frame. Why am I getting something about a square frame? What's square? What's square? Why am I feeling square? Okay, I know I've got to talk about something square. And you allow the feeling of the movement of mind and the inspiration to take you to the square. What is the square telling me? Okay, perhaps you're getting someone from the spirit world who's a bit of a square personality, or was considered very square because maybe they were a bookworm, or they were either highly intelligent or very nerdy and very much like to study, which we all think is wonderful. But what I'm saying to you, you can be drawn to the most minimalist, smallest of things and be inspired by the spirit. So I want you to think about what inspires you in your life. Cooking. It could be artwork. It could be anything creative. It could be the sound of words. If I was to say this to you, when was the last time you challenged yourself with your vocabulary? Do you learn new words? Do you try to pronounce different things in different languages sometimes? Have you thought of different cultures in the spirit world who use different words for different things that we might do in Western English? If you think about vocabulary and language, it's an absolutely marvelous thing, and it can lead you to a greater understanding of the person you are dealing with if you're doing a psychic reading or if you're doing a mediumistic reading. But if you don't open your mind to new possibilities like that, you won't get it. Your mind will stay with getting the standard boxed information. Now, if I was to say to you, if you all have a grandparent or someone older in the spirit world of another generation, and they brought through lovely evidence, how many of you really know about their dreams, their aspirations, their hopes? Right? Is it because maybe in our ancestry and the heritage behind us, most of our grandparents and great-grandparents and some of our parents had difficult times? People didn't have a lot of money years ago. There was wars. There was dreadful racial problems, which there still is. There was definitely horrendous social problems around the world. And so people were very limited because of religious beliefs, their color, their creed, their social, economic standing, which is absolutely, we know as mediums and as workers for the spirit, disgraceful to mark that against a human being. But what I'm saying to you, how do you not know that your grandmother wanted to be a suffragette or to lead a revolution? How do you know that your grandfather didn't try his utmost to rank up to be head of an army or had aspirations as a young man to get there? He may not have, but that doesn't mean his aspirations are any less. So if your mind is not open to being creatively interactive with the soul and the spirit, they will only just bring you the basic evidence because that's all your mind is seeking. I want you to remember this. All information is available. All information is available. There is nothing off limits with the world of the spirit. So we limit ourselves as human beings. And so what I would say to you is, how creative are you? Can you use your environment more? Can you respond to color, to shape, to texture a little bit more? If we look at Michael on the screen, look at those beautiful trees behind Michael. Look at the shades in that print and look at nature. That is inspiring just to look at. And if you wanted to work with Michael, you could use that as a standing point. If you get up and you have no contact, or you have no contact in front of you, or no psychic information for the person in front of you, use the environment that you are in. But be mindful of color, texture, and shape. So inspiration is extremely important. Now, the inspired medium is someone who will take a risk, is someone who will say to the spirit world, okay, I have these elements, excuse me, I've just got a bad back, so I've just got to position myself a little bit. I have these elements of you and I have this evidence, but what moved you? What made your soul move? You know, you might have just been a cleaner or someone who looked after their family, but surely you were still moved by different things. And so if we build up this rapport with the other world in our relationship with them, we become more open-minded. And there's so many great minds in the spirit world willing to work with us, great ideas and inspiration, but today we're lacking. Now, if you look back in our history, and unfortunately I have to use the word history because we haven't had a lot of groundbreaking evidence of mediums being inspired with great ideas for the world as of today. But in history, you know, we had Logie Baird, who got the idea for the television through a seance. Through a seance, the idea and inspiration of a television came. We have Marconi with the radio. Okay, we have all the great suffragettes, especially for you guys in the States, who worked for the black and white equality and to have an even culture. Suffragettes who actually made a difference, who stood out in their faith and did some things. And if you look back through spiritualist history, a lot of people that were movers and shakers were spiritualists or mediums. And they're just put to one side and forgotten about. Now, what was in them that inspired them? Have you thought about, why haven't we got that today? Where's all our movers and shakers today? Everybody's in the same lane, doing the same thing, getting on with their own little bit. But when was the last time we had somebody really stand out as a medium or use inspiration with their ability to create something for society of a positive nature? We seem to have lost that, don't you agree? We've got lots in history, but we haven't got any in recent history. Now, I believe that's because it's our minds today. Our minds are so caught up with the busyness of everyday life. Far too many people become a medium to make money and have a career change rather than it being a calling, because mediumship is a calling of the sacred, whether you like it or not. Because you can do it to make funds, you can make a living, and I quite openly and honestly say I make a living out of it, but there's an aspect of my work which is extremely sacred. And I treasure my relationship with the other world, and I will do my utmost to do my best for them, which means I fall off the horse a lot, but it also means I'm open to new things and trying. And so when you think of that, we have a lot of people out there being psychics, a lot of healers, a lot of mediums, but we also have a lot of generic. Okay, we're like a sausage factory. Get them in, develop them, get them out, and they're working for the spirit world. And many of them, in fact, most of them all do wonderful work. But we also need people to inspire. And I say, how many of you would use your ability within your mediumship to inspire? How many of you think, well, okay, Spirit, what can I do from here? Where can I go? What can we do? How are we going to make things work? Let's look at what COVID's done to us all, locked us all up, kept us away from family and friends. Everybody's had to jump online. Most people didn't like it. A few years ago, people who I know, great mediums around the world, are saying, oh, we can't do it online, it doesn't work, blah, blah. And now they're booked out and they're full online. So it does work because there's no barrier. There is no barrier between our world and the other world. The spirit have no limitations between a telephone, a Zoom, a Skype. And a lot of readings that I do, all my teaching's online, and my teaching's been online for about 5 years. And when COVID hit, I had to move everything online, and I was a big risk, but I did it. And so I couldn't go to the countries where I normally travel to. So I brought the countries to me. So I got stuck with COVID, like many of you. And my French group, I was due to be in Paris and London, actually the day before COVID locked us down in Sydney. So what I did, I just went, okay, if I can't go to Paris, Paris can come to me. So I got up at 3 o'clock in the morning to take my class at 3:30. And I just thought, this is mental, Christine. What are you doing? This will never work. But it did. It was hugely successful. And I actually loved it. I was very, very tired, but I loved it. So if I hadn't have moved myself to do it, nothing would have happened, and I would have lost 30 students. But instead, those 30 students got into their development program, and we have continued. So it's about pushing yourself out of your box, not just with time limits, but with everything. And so I say to the spirit world, okay, this is how it's got to be. There's changes now. Where's our inspiration? What can we do? You can go to hundreds of classes around the world today to teach you how to demonstrate. You can go to hundreds of classes to teach you spiritual healing and psychic work. What about classes for humanity? What about classes for bringing people together to use their knowledge and inspiration for the good of mankind? Because that's what the spirit world want as well. What about having a discussion panel and an open evening where people come in with ideas and trying things? I did this with one of my groups, for example, and I've done lots of different things like this before, but I thought I would try it online, where they had to go and get a living piece of nature, and they had to bring the living piece of nature into their office or their room where they were working to put it online in Zoom. And it was a very challenging exercise because it was a living piece of nature. People had to feel the life force through it, through the technology. But we did it, and we had some fantastic results. So it was just about moving the mind and saying, we are capable. We are capable. So I want you to really think, don't wait for the spirit world to give you inspiration. That's the worst thing you can do. If you're doing an inspired address, philosophy, or an inspired talk, of course they're going to give you thoughts of inspiration to help you deliver that address. Of course they are, to help you deliver your chat or lecture. But you also have to have movement within your own soul. Because if you do that and you say to the spirit world, well, this is what I'm about. This is what moves me. How can I bring this into my work? What can I do? They will help you. For example, like I was just saying earlier, before some of you got on, I've just done a big class, and it's continuing on the elements, where people are working with the elements of earth, water, fire, wind, air, sand, snow, storms, to bring about deeper information at a soul level and with the spirit world. And the innovative ways the spirit world are inspiring the mediums is nothing short of breathtaking. And the mediums are surprising themselves because they're going, okay, let's try it. And they do it. So what I'm trying to say to you here, the inspired medium is not always the inspired medium from the spirit. Yes, they give us inspiration, but it is also what moves your soul. What moves your soul? And sometimes, guys, you have to be brave enough to lead a revolution. You have to have tongue-in-cheek. And I mean, I'm a little bit cocky. Wendy will tell you I'm a bit cheeky. So I say things, I say what people think normally, and I just say it how it is. And I'm known for that, but I say it in a loving way. Just take a risk. And if it doesn't work, stuff it and flush it. Get rid of it. Just think, oh, well, I tried that. Flush that. But if you don't try to look for innovation and inspiration that moves your spirit, how are you going to expect the spirit world to move you if you can't move yourself? Right? And if you can't move others around you. If you have a small group of friends, perhaps 5 or 6 of you get online, or perhaps you do a small class where you can get together. I know people like Karen and maybe a couple of others. I'm not sure if anybody else in Perth, Western Australia. I'm coming home soon, Karen. So that over there's no lockdown at the moment. They're out of it. So you can be together with groups. Some of us are still limited with that. Pull a group together and do experiments. Get your paints and your pencils and your colors and chalks and get out there and work with texture, shading and color. Get out there with nature. Bring the pieces of nature into the circle and allow the movement of mind to help deliver a beautiful address, a piece of philosophy, perhaps inspiration for somebody else's soul, and then perhaps to be moved by the spirit world so they can help your mind become malleable to be able to impress you with other things they want to talk about, other than the fact I'm a mother, I had a heart attack, my name was Anne, I have 12 kids, and I lived in Louisiana. Well, that's all fantastic, Anne, and that's all lovely. You had 12 kids, and how wonderful that you're back from the spirit world. But tell me about your life. What moved you when you were here? What were your dreams? What would your grandchildren want to know about you? My grandmother had a very difficult life and was left with 7 children at 42. And she never married or even looked at another man again. And she always said she wanted to go on the stage and be like Marlene Dietrich. Now, my grandmother used to bake and wear an apron like all grandmothers, and she loved us kids and cooked the dinner, and we didn't have a lot of money, and neither did she. And, you know, but she used to tell us stories. And my grandmother was a wonderful medium, natural medium, and she used to light fires and teach us pyromancy and tell us stories about the faces in the flames and things like that. And she used to always, when she was older and had a little bit more money and had a bit more comfortable life, she used to have her nails done and wear lovely dresses. And I remember her at parties in this long caftan, swishing with port and lemon and a cigarette holder, like she thought she was Marlene Dietrich, for a bit of fun with the family. And funny little songs she sings. But all of that makes up the depth and the richness of her own inspiration, of her character, other than the apron and the cooking and the loving of the family. Does that make sense? Because all of that is normal, but she was a woman with dreams and aspirations and hopes. And she had to celebrate a lot of things later in life because she dedicated her life to raising 7 children. And so she did. And it was rather wonderful. And to see my grandmother getting off an aircraft with a big lovely fur coat and her hair all done up with long red painted nails was absolutely marvelous. It was fantastic. That's the grandmother that I want back from the spirit world. If someone tells me there's a woman here swaying her hips, singing, having a port and lemon, you know, and she loves Sammy Davis Jr., and she'll probably think looking for him over the other side. Somebody who's talking like that, that's my Nan. That's what I want to hear, because it shows me that that soul in the world of the spirit is still alive and living with all the hopes and dreams they had when they were here. But what wonderful stories to pass down through the ancestry. But if you don't open your mind inspirationally to those sort of elements of information, which are not always easy to get and they're not on demand, you have to first start by opening the mind. Then you shan't get any. Does that make sense to you? Because all information, if you learn anything from today, all information is available, right? So when I come back from the spirit world, I'm coming back like a little blonde bombshell who loves to dance and sing and loves a glass of wine and loves to joke and have fun, but I also have this lovely sacred aspect where I love my work, my dedication to the spirit world. So I want you to think about the generations around you that you are linking with. I want you to think about them. Yes, they went through war years and they had difficult times and we could learn wonderful lessons. But what were the dreams and the conversations around when nobody had any money for TV or there was only a little bit of food on the table? What were the conversations they spoke to their wives and their husbands? What moved them? They had a lot sterner drive. We have unfortunately raised a society of youth today where the coping mechanisms are literally very, very weak. Very weak coping mechanisms, emotionally and mentally and physically, especially emotionally today. There's an expectation that things just happen. So as history moves forward and we move forward, we have to remember that the world of the spirit moves forward as well. You all know about tech stuff, or if you're like me, I'm literally technically backward. I can just do the basics. But now, if you think about young minds moving into the spirit world, they're very technical, aren't they? They're very technical. And so I want to say to you, what sort of mind do you understand? What sort of mind are you open to? If you don't know about Instagram or Facebook or WhatsApp or any of the platforms around technically, even on your phone, how's the spirit world going to bring that back to you? Right? So it's not that you have to be a walking dictionary or a walking encyclopedia, but it does mean that you have to be more expansive and broader. And how do we know that maybe perhaps Philip's grandfather wanted to play Dracula in a movie, wanted to be a famous actor? How do we not know that? How do we not know that perhaps Wendy's mum wanted to be a ballerina? How do we not know? Because we don't allow ourselves the time to really, really be with the soul to bring through those deeper aspirations. So grab the evidence, give the evidence of who you got, but then move with them. Tell me about your life. Let me be you. Let me feel you. So I'm living your life again through my breath, because you are the breath of the spirit. When you're in that communication, you are the breath of the spirit. Let yourself be moved through that breath in that flow of communication. And as you are flowing with that breath through that communication, the spirit world will inspire you and take your mind on a journey if you let it, and you disengage your brain. Get the brain out of the way to say, is this right? Or this sounds silly, did it? Go with it. Go with it. And just as I feel inspired now, as I'm talking to you, I just allow the spirit just to move me in whatever way they need to. So the information can just come. I'm not cognitizing, I'm not thinking, I'm allowing the flow of communication, of inspiration to come very naturally. Because we have put ourselves in boxes and we have limited. There's so many experiences around us that we don't quite understand, but we know there's such fantastic phenomena that happens in our universe. We don't have all the answers, we have theories. We have scientists, we have researchers, people who work with it. All of it is just like a fantastic, fantastic jigsaw where all the puzzles fit together to create the beautiful picture of life. So I'm going to say to you, what inspires you? What inspires you? Now that doesn't mean you're going to be Van Gogh or Monet or Liberace or anything like that, but it might mean that you find something in your life to help you, right? Because ultimately, guys, it's all down to us. Ultimately, it's all down to us. And if you're with teachers who are not inspiring you, leave the group. I always say to my students, when I stop inspiring you, move, because the art of teaching is to inspire. The art of teaching and guiding people is to inspire people. So if you're not getting that from the group or the class or wherever you are, you need to think about what feeds you. If you do something that's becoming a chore, or perhaps with some people who go to classes, and I've heard people say they get stressed before they go in case they can't get a contact, or they don't get the right information in a reading. How dreadful is that? It's not about causing stress or angst, this work. It's a beautiful dance of exploration and discovery. And once we join the dance, it doesn't matter if we fall out of step. We just pick ourselves up and start again. We all dance to different tunes and different drums, but the whole reality of it is we're all in the same ballroom. All in the spirit world said that to me a long time ago. Christine, everyone is in the same ballroom, but they dance different steps. And I use that in a lot of my work, what they said to me, that little saying, and it's so true. So talk to me about your inspiration. Talk to me about your development. Do you lack inspiration? Where do you feel you might need it more? Where do you think you could use it? Or any other questions around inspiration?
Christine, during COVID, I decided to push the reality a little bit more. So I learned spoon bending and OBEs and everything like that. But somehow, apart from my mediumship, I've fallen into capturing images via steam, via water, any reflection really. And it's been really successful. I think it's because the spirit world know I have an interest in it, so they're drawing more and more from me. And I probably would never have done it if it hadn't been for COVID, because I can do it from home and I just set it up. And it really is so easy. And it seems to be that it's a missing, not art form, but people are missing these opportunities, which I've been really enjoying.
Well, that's great, Karen. If you find something like that that works for you and you're getting results from it, and I think what it is just exploring and it's just trying things, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just trying things and looking for different avenues in different ways. And I believe that if you talk to the spirit world and you say, you know, my development is here and I'm looking for inspiration, I'm going to find my own inspiration that moves my soul, so perhaps you can move my soul with me and we can work together. Then you look at things, and you know, the spirit world's not separate from us. I do believe they hear our thoughts. They're not aware of all our thoughts. We already know that. They don't hear everything, but they hear a huge percentage. So I'm very, very aware of that. And I would say that if you've talked to them and that's happened and you're having these experiences, good for you. If it's working, you know, who can anybody argue? I mean, you're always going to get, is it evidential? Is it real? Is it reflection? Is it a thought form? You're always going to get the other side, because that's where discernment comes, which is always very, very important. Okay, you always have that discernment line. But I also say that when you get something and you have a feeling about it and it feels right for your soul, then you have to follow that. And I do believe that sometimes you have to walk outside of the lanes to be able to do it. I've been in a lane on my own all my life. Don't worry about that, Karen. Don't worry about it.
I said, bring an image eventually that can be taken by a loved one. That's the goal of it. That you have a photo and I've got a photo, a bit like Sonia. You've got a photo, I've got a photo, and let's head that way. So we'll see.
Good luck.
Yeah, thanks.
Good luck. Good luck. Okay, any other questions or comments or anything? Any advice or anything?
I just wanted to show this picture of Phillips, which is scrying art.
Beautiful.
He does it all the time. And Karen, you should see his pictures. They're really inspirational.
Well done. Yes, scrying's fantastic. I love scrying. Fabulous. Well done, Philip. You see, it's just about using things as tools. You know, if you want to use the psychic tools, there's so many different things you can do, but then it can lead you. You know, you can get a great contact from a tarot card. As long as you know when the contact comes in, you don't have to refer to the tarot card. But you can have a tarot card, and from a tarot card, you can move to the spirit world. So it's about how you relate to things. Have you thought about different cultures and how perhaps their symbology or perhaps signs or the way they work with their spiritual understanding, what their symbols and signs are like that moves you? What appeals to you? Have you thought about different cultures and different natures around you? Do you have a culture that you're drawn to? If you have a particular culture, like for myself, I have a fascination with Egyptology, ancient African and Egypt. So anything like that is often to do with a different consciousness that's with me in the spirit world, but I get moved into old Africa. So anything African, even in general Africa today, I think I should have been born in Africa. I love it. So I love everything about that country, but there's different understandings, beliefs, rituals, ceremonies of this spiritual nature that I also find interesting. The interesting thing is, I seem to get a lot of African people for readings. Right? Now that only happened after some years. Why is that? Because maybe there's some sort of correlation. So you've got to think about different things. Look at different countries. Look at the geographical states. Don't just be hell-bent on getting the basics. Spread your mind. Okay, anybody else? Comments? No?
Yeah, I'll comment. Yes. I'll comment, Christine. I think one of the problems for a lot of people now is the scientific method. They've been taught so much with that scientific method that they can't get out of that box. The other thing is I've found really useful is there's some sets of story cards you can get. They're not actually tarot cards and things. They're for writers, in fact, but they've got pictures on them. And I find them really good as that lead in when you're working with someone giving them a reading.
Yeah, you can use anything. Anything can be used. So yes, story cards, anything like that. And the scientific method, I think that we're always going to have science involved. I think personally for myself, that's a part that's really important because of the advancement of history. But I don't think that all of science understands the spirit world at all. I think it's needed, but I don't think that they understand it all. Yes, Christina.
You said that the spirit world doesn't pick up every thought. Is there something that determines what they do pick up?
To be truthful, I would be honest with you and tell you I really don't know the answer to that question, because I believe that when a thought is strong and has intention and emotion behind it, they definitely understand and get that, particularly if it's to do to enhancing soul growth, to enhancing our life here. But I don't believe that everyday thoughts, I think a lot of that wither into the ether. I believe when it's intentional, emotional, and it's consistent. It's like, you know, people say prayers. If your prayers are habitual, they're not doing anything. They're just repetitive. It's repetitive energy. A true prayer should be from the soul, from the heart, in the moment.
Yes.
That is the intention, and the vibration of the intention will be felt by the spirit world more than a repetible prayer. But I do believe they do hear us. You know, a little while ago, through COVID last year, I was really fed up like everybody else, and I couldn't see people face to face. I couldn't go to my groups, my workshops, had to do everything online, and I didn't like it. And I was really opposed. I thought, I don't really like this. I don't know how I'm going to do this. Anyway, I was getting through it because I was already teaching online, but it meant full-time online. And I went and sat by the ocean. I was talking to the spirit world, and I said, I'm falling off my horse because I'm bored. I don't like looking at the screen, and I'm just not finding it stimulating. I like physical interaction. I've fallen off the horse, spirit. I'm so sorry. I'm just not motivated. I just feel flat. So I'll just go along with my work, but I'll just feel flat. And I was just sending out those thoughts, but it was really bothering me about trying to find innovation, find inspiration for the people I was teaching online. How am I going to hold them to keep them interested? And I teach 75 students across 1 week. So I have 7 different groups around the world. And that's not my added courses. That's just the weekly groups for development. And so I had to really think, what am I going to do? And I was in this mindset. And when you know you're in that mindset, your inspiration is weak, right? Because the emotion of what you're thinking about yourself dulls everything in that mind.
Yeah.
And then I was walking home, and about 15 minutes later, I was thinking of something totally different. And I heard a voice in my head and say, get back on the horse. And I went, oh, I heard that loud and clear, get back on the horse. So I came home and I wrote in my diary. And just the very fact that I knew they'd heard me lifted me up.
Yes.
I was like, oomph, there's my fire again. But we're just human. We're human. So I would say that in answer to you is that when your intention and your emotion is attached to it and it's meaningful, they will hear you, Christina.
Yes, it seems to be the communication is like supply and demand. There has to be a question and there's an answer there, and it's almost like a magnetic attraction that they'll
That's
get
right.
together, you know.
Well, a lot of psychic work is like that. It's like, you know, an interaction. There's no movement in it. I mean, I like movement in mediumship, and that's why I think inspiration is important. Where are our great speakers? To be able to speak to a crowd and hold an audience in the palm of your hand with talking about the spirit world, about education about the spirit world. To me, to have that movement within a crowd is more meaningful than giving a contact. And we don't see that very much these days, even though I know the contacts are so important and we do help people. The spirits say, you bring one person to someone and you aid that suffering, you've done your job. But how wonderful to see a crowd of people moved by listening to a good speaker. Where are they?
Keith Parsons is one, I feel.
Who, sorry?
Keith Parsons.
I don't know him, and I'm sure there's plenty around the world. But from where I am, we don't have very many in Australia, do we, Wendy? So there needs to be more people wanting to do that, and that you're lucky if that's in your community, Christina. That's great. But what I'm saying is, just because you're a speaker doesn't mean you're not a medium. What you can use your mediumship to be a great orator, to be a great writer. It doesn't have to just be about getting a link from Granny. But everybody's hell-bent on information, right? And so we are very much focused on the information and the sort of information we get. What I want to say to you is challenge yourself. Challenge yourself to say, what inspires me? What's moving me? Where's my oomph? What am I doing? How can I work with the spirit world? Okay, I want to work with my contacts, and I want to bring these people to me who are going to bring forward somebody for their loved one, which is what my job is to do. But help me move that person and help me really touch the other soul and the spirit by the movement of my own soul. That can only happen, guys, if you're open-minded. You can't create a medium out of guidelines. We have guidelines for the role of functioning of development, but then the mediumship aspect with an individual flourishes of the single person's own being. So your life experiences will all influence around the medium you become and who you are. Does that make sense? Question, yes, Steve.
So, how open is your mind, do you think?
Sorry, I missed that. How
open do you think your mind is?
I try to have it as open as much as everything. I have certain things that I don't believe in or I don't agree with, would be another word, but I will never say anything, something's not possible. But I would say that with the spirit world, I try it to be as open as possible. So
and those things you don't agree with, how do you deal with that? I mean, that seems, I'm feeling this blockage personally.
It depends what it comes from. I mean, when I say I don't agree, it might be a personal opinion that I don't agree with something, but I will try not to let that interfere with my work with the spirit, because when I'm working for the spirit, it's not about my business, it's about their business. So if you're finding a blockage within you, you need to find out within you what's going on, what's causing that.
Okay, I didn't mean a blockage within me. I'm feeling a blockage, you know, at the moment, just saying. But yeah, I'm just curious. Yeah. I wanted to know how you dealt with negative. You know, you said you had bad feelings about things. I wonder how you get over that, or can you get over that? Or do you want to get those bad feelings?
For example, if you have somebody who comes to you for a private sitting or a reading who you don't like the look of, or you don't feel connected with them, and the mental mind comes in straight away saying, I don't like the vibe of this person, I'm not comfortable, I don't agree with them, blah, 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 blah. And sometimes my frustration comes out when I'm doing a wonderful reading, which I think I've got this lovely contact from the spirit world, and the person in the chair just wants to ask ridiculous questions. And I can feel myself getting irate. So I have to go, okay, shut up, Christine. It's not about you. They're being human. And so I just have to try and just control the aspect of Christine that wants to control that person in the chair, because they're having their own personal experience, which is not my experience. So if you've got something, there's things I don't agree on, I just try to get myself out of the way when I'm doing a personal situation, whether it be a private reading to give intuitive guidance on a psychic level, because I do a lot of psychic work as well, or whether it be a mediumistic contact from the spirit world. It's not my business what's going on between the soul and the spirit and the soul here I'm working for. I just have to be the intermediary between the two worlds to do the best for both I can. And if there's blockages, normally it's to do with our own mental and emotional minds creating that. And sit and talk to the spirit, practice some self-awareness and meditation, and sit in the quietness. One of the most important things as well, guys, Learn to sit without looking for information. Don't sit to look for information. Worst thing you can do. You should be sitting just to be with the Spirit, not to sit and gain information. Because if you sit and gain information, you're interfering with that presence that's trying to build up power around you. And it's the power that you create, which is the key to the relationship. It's the liquid gold that blends your mind with that world of the Spirit. So if you don't build that power from within your own soul and around you, your power will be weak, so your communication will be weak. But if you, every time you sit in meditation or you sit in the power, you're looking for information, you're defeating the purpose. You sit in the power to build it. So when you go to work for the Spirit, they have a battery of power to work with. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll have Susan and Nicole. Yeah.
Okay, my question for you is that it's really wonderful to try to get that spirit connection and to try to get this information about the spirit person, but sometimes what happens to me is I'll get this information, but the recipient has absolutely no idea that the person may have had this inspiration to do the type of thing they wanted to do. For example, I can, listening to you, I can sense that my grandmother probably wanted to be an actress because she did a lot of plays and shows. But if you said that to my brother, he wouldn't agree with you at all because he knew nothing about this part of her.
Yeah. So all you would have to say then is then it's your duty as the medium to explain to the recipient, I'm giving you the evidence of the afterlife. You do understand the communicator that I have is your grandmother, but I just want to let you know she's letting me know that this was something, a lovely part of her that perhaps she didn't share with the family. And how wonderful is it that she feels comfortable enough by providing all that evidence to be able to share with her grandson those aspirations of her life. So we have to remember it's not just about the recipient. It is about the soul and the spirit. So it's how you put it over to someone. I'm just about this afternoon, I've got a lot of clients in Mumbai in India, which is an amazing, been an amazing journey for me. And I seem to be going through a big stage a few years ago, and it started again with Hindus. And I've had some very interesting contacts in the spirit world where I'm talking to grandchildren or children of people with great Hindu faith, which is very different to spiritualism. But the most wonderful thing is what's happened with the family, and how I think the threads of the spirit work, which might help you, Susan, is they knew I was talking to the grandchildren. They were talking about the Quran and the books and these sort of things. And without me knowing, further family members over a period of months booked in private sittings. And I didn't know they were the same family, different names. And the threads of what the spirit family were telling me about the Hindu faith to do with their family here, all the families come together, the ones who've had readings, about 4 or 5 of them, and discussed it and realized that there was actually another side to the depth of understanding in the religion and faith of their grandparents. Now, the spirit world have got a bigger intelligence than us, higher intelligence. So I would say, with that, Susan, give your evidence, but then if your spirit person wants to say, I really would have loved to, I love dancing, I love music, I love being on the stage, and I would have loved to have been an actress. I think that's a lovely way to allow her that expression in the spirit world, whether your brother liked it or not, because it's not really about him, is it?
But that's what some of the recipients don't understand.
That's very true, but then that's the nature of our work. That's up to us to explain that they are living people with living memories, and they had fulfilling, wonderful lives and aspirations and dreams like we did. So I guess all of it really is in terminology and how you put it over. And the other thing is sometimes they can go away and research. For example, with this Hindu family, I talked about the Quran and about this man reading the Quran, which was insistent. And the girl said, no, 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 no. Only to find out through different cousins months later that he did. And he was teaching the Quran to the young children. So it's about what they want to do. And his aspiration for his grandchildren to read the Quran was so important. But he just had a funny way of getting through it with the different readings.
Yeah.
Yes, someone else had a hand up. Somebody else had a hand up. I hope that helps you, Susan.
Thank
Nicole.
you.
In regards to, you know, like when we're sitting in the power, I don't ask anything, but that's when, like yesterday in our group, I get downloads and images when I'm actually sitting. And as soon as I come out of it, it just stops. But I don't ask anything. I'm not, you know, I'm just sitting and creating the emptiness, and I get
Okay.
information there.
Okay, well, first of all, recognize we can't create emptiness, because the mind will never be empty, because the brain won't allow it to do so, because the brain is a functioning element that keeps human nature alive. What happens is when you're sitting, the subconscious mind starts to flick up aspects of imagery, sounds, and mind levels. So just be aware that a lot of that will be subconscious, not necessarily all the spirit world. And even if you might just make, like I told you yesterday, use the mantra to focus. You want to be on a one-pointed element of focus. So your focus is just going into that power, sitting in that silence, in whichever way you do it for yourself. And every time your brain comes up, go back to this. Every time something comes up, go back to this. So it will come up, go back, come up, go back. It's constant until you learn to discipline it. So eventually I could be sitting here and I want to go and sit with the power, and I send my thoughts to the spirit world, and I'll be aware of a drill outside because there's renovations going on. I'll be aware of a dog barking. I'll be aware that I'm at my desk, and I'll be aware that I've got people in front of me. But as my awareness is all there, you can hear the dog, as my awareness is aware of that, I'm still able through discipline to shift my consciousness to a different level to the back of me, where I know the spirit are present. So even when I talk to you today, I'm not bringing through evidential communication, but there is a presence of the spirit power with me. But the spirit power that's with me is not personality, because there's not a personality needing to identify themselves. It's just the presence of the power. So I know they're here because I'm working. So as much as I hear that, I will take my back. I'm working with the spirit. I'm working with the spirit. I'm working with the spirit. So because my focus will be so disciplined and strong, that's where my mind will go. And all of that chatter will still be there, but it will become dull. You'll never get rid of it. It will just become dull, and you learn not to follow it. So just let everything come. Let all the images, all the sounds blow through the mind like a wind. Let it blow through your mind, and then just keep coming back to a point of silence and stillness.
But what I'm getting are the images. They're not thoughts. It's just like I get
that can be mixed up with subconscious, psychic, spirit. It could be all mixed up, but don't worry about it. Let it happen. Let it happen, because there's a stimulation of the psychic faculty happening within the consciousness of the mind. So as the psychic faculty becomes consciously stimulated, then what takes place is our own subconscious thoughts, our fears, our elements, aspects of brain, aspects of memory float to the top of the surface of the soup. So they float up here, and you get all of that. And what you want to do is learn to ignore them, so they just become here under the surface. And it'll eventually happen, Nicole, but it takes time.
Because I don't see, and you probably have answered that question many times before, but I don't see the difference between meditation and sitting in the power.
Right, okay, you will eventually. That's because you're not touching the power properly yet. Meditation is for well-being. Meditation is a disciplined thought of self-awareness. It's about, we use the words meditation with the power, and really they're two different things, but for definition, people will call it a meditative state, because it sort of is a meditative state. But a meditative state is being quiet for your own sense of well-being. It's a disciplined train of thought. When you're working with the power, you're going into that quiet state of awareness, but you're then going beyond. And that beyond will only take place when the quietness has hit a certain level. So first of all, the quietness level has to be achieved before you can start to have experiences where the presence of the power starts to build around you. Because first of all, you're building the power of self, the power of your own spirit. So you sit down and you might feel an energy, but that energy you're first feeling is your own aura and your own power. And that's where people get mixed up. They don't know the difference between their own power and the spirit power. The power of the spirit is a presence that gradually builds through times, discipline, and concentrated effort of sitting. So sitting a couple of times a week will help that.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Good.